Well, tonight, President Barack Obama delivered his State of the Union address, and I'm joined now with WENY political analyst Dr. Jim Twombly, who's here to break down some key parts of the president's speech. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's get right into it. The president talked about middle-class economics right at the top. Talked about paid sick leave, child care services, and lowering taxes for families. And he said anything brought to his desk, he'll veto it, basically.
Anything that Republicans propose that doesn't include that, he would veto. Or attempts by the Republicans to roll back some of the achievements of his administration. He talked about his record and how this was a record of accomplishment, bringing us back from the economic brink, and he wants to go further. That this has not been a complete recovery. We need to go much farther, and he talked about a tight-knit family, and he used the example of a woman who wrote a letter to him about the struggles they went through, and he used that as the basic overarching theme of his speech.
So basically, when he was tying in that family, he touched on education, which is how he said economics kind of goes into education. More people educated, the more money they can make and everything like that. So, how has that been received by Congress about the free community college? And also, how do you feel about it as a professor?
Well, as a professor, this is great. More people in college is wonderful. It keeps me working, and it helps me pay for my retirement. That's great. And I think we should foster higher education. The plan calls for 3/4 of tuition being paid for by the federal government, 1/4 of it being paid for by the state government. Republicans in Congress are leery of how it's going to be paid for, and of course they're not going to stand for any tax increase on the wealthy to pay for it.
So I think that was a consensus of those in the Twin Tiers. We asked, they're saying, who's going to pay for it? Is it coming out of my pocket? That was kind of the fear for everyone.
Yeah, and Obama's talking about actually cutting taxes on the middle class along with paying for this tuition. That's going to have to come from tax increases on the wealthy. So
it's kind of doubling the tax, taxing the wealthy and helping the middle class.
Right.
Twofold, kind of.
Yes.
Okay, and going on, the president implied kind of about the Keystone Pipeline. We'll move on. He said that he would consider trading the pipeline to strengthen a stronger infrastructure. How do you think the
Congress He didn't fully say that. He implied.
Implied.
Yeah, he implied that he might be willing to give up on the Keystone Pipeline if Congress would pass legislation for other infrastructure, such as having faster internet, high-speed rail, road repairs, bridges, etc. Things that would further stimulate the economy. Again, coupled with putting people back to school and getting more people in better-paying jobs would help stimulate the economy, finish the job.
So how do you think the Republicans in Congress will respond to that?
I mean, this is the first time that we've seen the president or any of the actors in Congress talk about maybe making a trade on Keystone. Others have suggested that maybe this is the way to go, that you give up the Keystone Pipeline and get something back for it.
Okay, and just very quickly, you were at the DNC, the convention back in 2004. So seeing President Barack Obama now, how has his track record been?
Right, he harkened back to that speech talking about a United States of America. We're not a red state, not a blue state, not a black or a white America. We're the United States of America. I remember that night, everybody saying this is the first African-American president. We didn't realize it would be so soon. Thought it would be a little bit longer in his career. But since he has become president, he became president in unfortunate circumstances where he had to take over an economy that was failing. He has nibbled away at the edges, and certainly I've not been a supporter of the president in terms of a lot of his efforts, but in the last several months, certainly he has gotten a lot of positive feedback or comeback from his policies. The economy has turned around. And his approval rating is now back to 50%, depending on which poll you look at.
Definitely. Well, we thank you for joining us here tonight. And we asked you, our viewers on Facebook, to share your thoughts on the President's State of the Union address. So we're going to send it over to WENY's Leander Rosa with the Talk of the Tiers. Leanne?
Aisha, as our Facebook thread indicated, many people said they were not watching or do not agree with the president, let alone anything he had to say in tonight's speech. So we turned to Twitter to take a look at some of the national comments on tonight's State of the Union. We saw a lot of comments after President Obama said, "I have no more campaigns to run." We weren't able to hear what someone was heckling him about, but he then stated, "Because I won them both." And that got a lot of witty responses on social media. Also, gay marriage was another big topic. Many supporters simply retweeting President Obama's quote, where he said something along the lines of, "I've seen something like gay marriage go from a wedge issue used to drive us apart to a story of freedom." And shortly after that, women's rights. President Obama mentioned, "We can agree it's a good thing teen pregnancies and abortions were at an all-time low and that every woman should have health care needs." And many women agreed. Some said they understand people have varying opinions on abortion, but they said that everyone should have access to necessary health care. Obviously, the thread goes on, and we're continuing to look through it all. But if you would like to join the conversation, be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. In the studio, Leanne DeRosa, WENY News.